Hi, my name is Emma Carter, and I'm 21 years old. I'm a college student studying literature in Chicago. You know, sometimes life doesn't give you flowers or fame, it gives you hard days, broken shoes, secondhand books, and long walks home. But let me tell you something beautiful. Sometimes, hidden inside all that brokenness, life also gives you love. This is not a fairy tale. There's no prince, no castle, and definitely no magical pumpkin carriage. There's just a girl who barely had enough to pay her rent and a boy who had nothing but a heart full of dreams. This is a story of how two poor people fell in love, not through luxury or destiny, but through pain, courage, kindness, and connection. This is my story. I was born in Kansas, in a small rural town called Augusta. My dad left when I was 4, and my mom worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. I never wore branded clothes. I used to patch up my jeans with tiny sewing kits. I grew up knowing the value of every dollar, every second, every favor. When I got accepted into Chicago City College, I cried, not just because I was happy, but because I was scared. Tuition was high. The city was expensive, and I didn't know how I was going to survive. But I packed my little suitcase, kissed my mom goodbye, and boarded a bus with $280 in my wallet. I shared a 1-bedroom apartment with 2 other girls, both richer than me. I worked at a bookstore part-time and cleaned offices at night. I studied in the quiet hours between jobs, and I cried more nights than I care to admit. But I never gave up. I never imagined love would find me in those difficult days, but it did. And his name was Liam Hayes. I met Liam outside a small coffee shop near the college campus. It was a freezing Tuesday morning, and I had just finished an overnight cleaning shift. I was wearing my old winter coat, the one with the broken zipper, and my hands were numb. I went in to grab the cheapest coffee on the menu, $1.25 drip, and when I opened my wallet, I realized I was short by 15 cents. I remember standing there, embarrassed, ready to put the cup back, and then a voice behind me said, "Hey, I got it." I turned around, and there he was, tall, unshaven, wearing a paint-stained hoodie and boots that had seen better days. "You don't have to," I said. "I want to," he replied with a smile. Nobody should be denied coffee, especially on a day like this. That's how it started, over coffee, over 15 cents. His name was Liam Hayes, 24 years old. He wasn't a student, he worked as a construction helper, temporary jobs, long hours, no benefits. He was from St. Louis, and he came to Chicago chasing a job that didn't last. Now, he stayed in a rundown shared house with 5 other laborers and was always looking for work. We started talking every few mornings outside that coffee shop, just small things at first, weather, books, random thoughts. He had a sharp mind, though he'd never gone to college. He loved poetry, and he wrote in a small notebook he always carried. One day, he showed me a poem he wrote. It was about working hands and broken dreams. It was raw and real and full of truth, and I was hooked. We started seeing each other more, not on fancy dates, we couldn't afford that. We went on long walks in the park, sat on benches, and shared street food. Sometimes, we went to the public library just to read together. Once, we danced on a quiet bridge at midnight with no music, just the sound of the river. He made me feel safe, not because he had money or a plan, but because he had presence. He listened, he noticed things others didn't. When my hands were cracked from cleaning chemicals, he brought me dollar store lotion. When I failed a literature exam, he stayed up reading Shakespeare with me, even though he hated it. When I felt ugly and tired, he looked at me like I was art. I started writing about him in my journal. Liam is poor, I wrote one night, but he gives more than anyone I've ever known. But love, when you're poor, is not easy. We both struggled with guilt. Sometimes, he'd say, "You deserve someone who can buy you flowers, Emma." And I'd reply, "I don't want flowers. I want someone who remembers that I like them." He'd look away, ashamed. I understood him because I felt the same. Every time I saw couples with nice clothes, dinners, cars, I felt like we didn't belong in the world they lived in. But we made our own world. One winter, I lost my bookstore job. I had nothing left but the night cleaning work, and rent was due. I was exhausted. One night, I came home to find a small envelope under my door. Inside was $80. No note, just cash. Note, just cash. I knew it was Liam. The next day, I confronted him. "Why did you do this?" I asked. He shrugged. "Because I had a little extra this week and you needed it." "You're broke, Liam." "Yeah," he smiled, "but broke people take care of each other too." We loved each other quietly, gently. We celebrated small things, a job offer, a hot meal, a sunny day. On my 22nd birthday, he gave me a poem, handwritten, tied with string, "To the girl with tired eyes and fire in her soul, may you never forget how beautiful you are, even when life forgets to tell you." I cried. That was the most valuable gift I had ever received. Then came the hardest moment of our relationship. Liam got an offer to move to Texas for a 6-month construction project, better pay, food, and a place to stay. He was torn. He didn't want to leave me, but he wanted to build something better for us. "You should go," I said, tears in my eyes. "I don't want to lose you," he whispered. "You won't," I said. "Just promise me one thing, don't forget me and come back." He left the next week. We spoke every day. Some nights, he was too tired, but he always sent a text, "Still breathing, still yours." 6 months later, he came back, thinner, tougher, sunburned, but smiling. He had saved money, not a lot, but enough to buy us time. We moved into a studio apartment together. He worked mornings, I studied and cleaned. We supported each other like two halves of the same soul. Eventually, I graduated, got an internship at a publishing house, and he started studying part-time to get certified in electrical work. We're still not rich, but we're building together. Love isn't about having it all. It's about giving when you have nothing left, showing up when you're tired, holding hands when your hearts are broken, and believing in someone when the world doesn't. I never imagined I'd fall in love with a man who didn't own a car, who smelled like paint thinner half the time, who bought me dollar store flowers with pride. But I did. And I'm glad, because Liam Hayes taught me that poor doesn't mean empty. Sometimes, the richest hearts come from the poorest homes. As spring turned to summer, Liam and I settled into a gentle rhythm. Our tiny studio apartment on the south side smelled of fresh laundry and late-night takeout. Sometimes, a makeshift picnic on the floor when we couldn't afford more than one meal out. We'd lie side by side on the threadbare rug, his calloused hand stroking my hair while I read aloud from the latest manuscript I was editing for my internship. The city was never quiet, sirens, chatter, the rumble of elevated trains overhead. But in those moments, it felt like our own private world. We learned each other's rhythms. I learned that Liam hummed when he was nervous, and that the soft whine of the AC at night soothed him to sleep. He learned that I always tapped my foot when I was excited and that I could recite Emily Dickinson by heart when I was happy. One muggy July evening, Liam surprised me with a picnic at Jackson Park. We sat on a threadbare blanket beneath a great oak, sharing day-old donuts and lukewarm lemonade he'd bought with the extra dollars he'd somehow scraped together that week. He had that shy, honest look in his eyes, like a boy who'd just discovered how to be brave, and he handed me a small folded piece of notebook paper. I unfolded it to find another poem. In hopeful light, we sow our seeds. In hopeful light, we heal our needs. By simple acts, our fortunes grow, in loving hearts, the richest glow. He reached out, fingers curling around mine. I know I can't promise you diamonds, he said, voice catching, but I promise to keep planting seeds of work, of dreams, of love every single day. I laughed through tears and kissed him, careless of the sticky glaze on my lips. I don't need diamonds, Liam. I need you. That fall brought new challenges. The publishing house internship ended, and I struggled to find full-time work. Every rejection email stung a little bit more than the last. Liam's construction projects slowed as winter approached, and for a while, we both felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down. We ate a lot of pasta with canned tomato sauce, and we learned to laugh about how excited we'd get when we found 3 for $1 avocados at the corner market. One cold November night, I sat Liam down on our sagging couch. I'm scared, I admitted, clutching a draft of my resume. What if we're stuck? What if nothing changes? Emma, look at me, he said. I met his gaze, and I saw all the late nights, all the poems, all the folded bills he'd slipped under my door. We're not stuck. We're alive. Every day, we wake up and choose this, choose to fight for ourselves, choose to believe we deserve more. That's not stuck, that's hope. In that moment, I realized his belief in me was stronger than any discouragement I'd ever felt. I squeezed his hand, and together, we made a plan. I'd enroll in evening classes to finish my bachelor's degree, and Liam would take the electrical certification exam. The months that followed were a blur of textbooks, flashing streetlights as I commuted from my night class, and early mornings when Liam quizzed me on grammar rules while I brewed coffee. We celebrated every milestone, when I passed my midterms, when he aced the practice exams, when our landlord finally fixed that leaky faucet. By March, the academic semester wound down, and I still remember that day vividly. I received a handwritten letter from a small Midwest press. They offered me a junior editorial position, starting in June. I screamed on the phone, tears streaming, and Liam lifted me off the ground in a victory twirl that nearly knocked us both over. 3 weeks later, Liam got his certification. He got a full-time offer with benefits from a local electrical contractor. That evening, we sat together on our stools in the kitchen, his work boots still dusty, with cold soda to celebrate. We did it, he said quietly. We did, I agreed, resting my head on his shoulder. And in the middle of a kitchen lit by a single bare bulb, with the city humming outside our window, I realized something important. Real love isn't built on perfect conditions. It isn't declared in grand gestures or measured by bank balances. It's forged in lean times, tempered by shared dreams, and strengthened by the simple choice to keep believing in each other, no matter how small the victories or how steep the climb. Summer arrived again. 2 years after Liam first handed me that poem in Jackson Park, our little studio on the south side had long since transformed. We'd moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment, 1 bedroom for us, the other for my home office, where I now worked full-time as an assistant editor. The walls were decorated not with expensive art, but with Liam's framed poems and the postcards I collected on a budget road trip we took through Iowa one October. Every morning, I'd wake to the muffled click-click of Liam's alarm at 5:30 a.m. He'd slip out to catch the sunrise over the concrete horizon, coffee thermos in hand, before heading to the electrical shop. I'd roll out of bed a little later, brew my own cup, and slide into the metro for the 20-minute ride downtown. We still ate breakfast together whenever we could, scrambled eggs on toast, sometimes with a smear of jam if we felt indulgent. Our routines felt ordinary, but to me, they were miracles. Just 5 years ago, I was patching jeans and failing classes. Now, I had a degree, a career I loved, and a partner whose name was on the lease beside mine. One afternoon in July, as I was leaving the office, I found Liam waiting in the lobby. He had that look again, the same shy courage I'd seen in his eyes when he first paid for my coffee. In his hand was a small, weathered tin box. "I brought you something," he said. We walked to the nearby park. The Midwestern heat hung heavy in the air, but a gentle breeze stirred the oak leaves. He opened the tin, and inside lay a delicate silver key. "Key to what?" I asked. He smiled, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a folded piece of paper, blueprint thin and hand-drawn. "It's a place I've been saving up for," he said, "a little fixer-upper in Augusta, Kansas, not far from where I grew up." My heart raced. I pressed my hand over my mouth. "I know it's crazy," he continued, "and I know we don't need another project, but I've dreamed of turning an old house into a home, our home. Somewhere quiet, where we can grow a garden, write our stories, and maybe someday hear children running down the hall." Tears blurred my vision. I thought of my mother's small house back in Kansas, of dusty fields and star-filled skies. I thought of the nights Liam and I spent studying in that studio apartment, of the poems he wrote on napkins. I thought of everything we'd built together. "Yes," I whispered, 1,000 times, yes. That night, we celebrated with pasta and a single stolen bottle of wine. We made plans, which rooms to paint, where the garden would go, how we'd furnish it, mostly with thrifted finds and a few hand-me-down treasures. We even sketched out what our future might hold, my continued work in publishing, his own contracting business, maybe, just maybe, a small writing retreat where we could invite friends to stay. In the next months, we juggled our city jobs with weekend drives to Kansas. We scraped and sanded, painted and planted. Neighbors waved. A local carpenter offered to teach Liam some old-school woodworking techniques. A retired librarian donated shelves. Every dollar we saved, every hour we invested, felt like another brick in the foundation of our dreams. By the following spring, the little pale blue house on Main Street looked transformed. Wildflowers edged the walkways. A porch swing, bought cheap at a yard sale, and fresh paint swayed beneath hanging ferns. Inside, we had a small workspace for me, a workshop for him, and on the kitchen wall, that poem he wrote for me on my birthday, framed and front and center. In hopeful light, we sow our seeds. In hopeful light, we heal our needs. When we finally moved in full-time, leaving Chicago's bustle behind, I realized that home had never been a place of luxury or status. It was wherever we chose to build it, where our hearts breathed easiest, where our shared struggles became the mortar that held us together. One evening, as we rocked in the porch swing, watching crickets dance in the twilight, Liam reached for my hand. "Thank you," he said softly. I leaned my head on his shoulder. "Thank you," I replied, "for showing me that love can turn nothing into everything." And in that quiet Kansas twilight, surrounded by the dreams we'd sown, we knew our story was far from over. It was just beginning, a story of two people, once poor, who discovered that the richest life is built not on wealth, but on love, resilience, and the willingness to grow together, one seed at a time.